Welcome to The Big Picture. My name is Mohammed Hassan, and today we speak with a doctor in Gaza, an eyewitness to the brutal and sudden end to 2 months of ceasefire. At least 85 Palestinians were killed just this morning as Israel continues to escalate its attacks on Gaza, just 2 days after it unilaterally broke the ceasefire with Hamas. More than 500 have been killed so far by Israeli airstrikes since Tuesday. That is according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Hospitals continue to be overwhelmed with more than 900 injuries and facing ongoing shortages ever since food and fuel were cut off by Israel's government in early March. Israel says it's targeting Hamas officials, but so far 2/3 of those killed have been women and children, and that includes close to 200 children. In fact, UNICEF says Tuesday was the single deadliest day for children in Gaza since the war began. Dr. Feroze Sidhwa is a trauma surgeon volunteering at Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza. Dr. Feroze, when you hear messages from the Israeli government, as we have been over the last 2 days, saying that they are targeting Hamas structures, Hamas officials, they are not targeting civilians, what is your experience as a doctor on the ground of that statement? Does it feel true to you?
Well, it's hard to know whether or not they're targeting civilians versus there's two possibilities. By every measure, this is an overwhelming civilian casualty. It's by this measure, women and children are not combatants in the Gaza Strip. Everybody knows that. And they're about 70% of the casualties. But there's two possibilities. One is that the Israelis are targeting Hamas and somehow just killing a whole bunch of other people, and they just care so little that they kill women and children at this rate that they're continuing to do it anyway. And the other possibility is that they're doing it on purpose. It doesn't really matter which one is true. If I treat human beings like ants that I don't care if I'm driving over while I drive down the highway, that's the same as targeting. It's ridiculous. So no, I don't. It doesn't have much to do with what I see in the hospital. It just has to do with the simple facts of the matter. Most of the people killed by a wide margin are women and children and the elderly. And it's just if you can't, like for example, when the Russians bomb a children's hospital in Kyiv, and I've worked in Ukraine 3 times since the Russian invasion. When the Russians bomb a children's hospital in Kyiv, nobody cares if they did it on purpose or not. If you're firing shells or drones or whatever at a city so recklessly that you accidentally bomb a children's hospital, you're doing something criminal. That's wrong. Everybody can understand it in the case of Russia. It's the same thing here, except it's times a billion.
And we heard from UNICEF this week saying that this has been the deadliest week, Tuesday especially the deadliest day for children in Gaza since the war began. Can you describe what this toll is on them, not only physically on their lives, but psychologically as well?
Yeah, and just to be clear, the deadliest day for children in Gaza means it's the deadliest day for children in the world, because Gaza is the most dangerous place in the world to be a child, according to UNICEF. I know what it means. There's the heartbreak and devastation of continuing to pronounce children dead. Dr. Morgan McMonagle tried to save, he's an Irish trauma and vascular surgeon who's here with me. He tried to save a 6-year-old boy who had been hit by shrapnel kind of from his face all the way down to his groin. The kid had 2 holes in the right side of his heart. The right side of his liver was torn in half. He had multiple injuries to his intestines. His heart stopped on the way up to the operating room, but Dr. McMonagle was actually able to get it restarted to repair the holes in his heart. He was 6 years old, so he was physiologically very robust and able to survive for a little bit longer, but he died 12 hours later, just like we suspected he would. And it's not just the death of children in the hospital that affects children. I took care of a 29-year-old woman who happened to be I actually thought she was the sister of a physician here in the hospital, but I was misremembering who the guy was. He was actually a journalist who had interviewed me earlier with the Associated Press. He had helped, on Democracy Now! He had helped facilitate the camera work for that. And his sister is 29 years old. Her name was Luba. She has three kids, and she came in with the sacrum. It's kind of the middle part of your pelvis, just completely obliterated from a giant piece of shrapnel. There was a tennis ball sized hole in her back, and then a tennis ball sized hole in her sacrum. Her rectum was torn in half. Her vagina was torn. Her bladder was torn. And the sacrum has this fine plexus of veins on top of it that's just, it bleeds like crazy, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So we packed her as tightly as we could, just trying to keep pressure on the bleeding, basically. But she also died 12 hours later, just kind of like we knew. We don't have an infinite amount of blood in the hospital, and so we couldn't just keep resuscitating her forever. Like we would be able to do in the United States or the UK or somewhere else. So now she has, now three kids don't have their mom. She was 29, so I'm assuming her kids were quite young. These are, again, it's devastating, and it's the same. I almost feel silly telling these stories anymore because the whole world's heard them for 15 months. Everybody knows what happens when you drop bombs on tents now. Everybody knows what happens when you orphan tens of thousands of children. Everybody knows what happens when you kill tens of thousands of children. And it's just continuing. It's hard to explain, actually, how things can be so callous. There was I spoke to the director of nursing at this hospital, and for a very long time, actually, I visited him in his home a few days before the bombing campaign restarted. And I remember he told me, after we've been talking for a while, he said, I remember when I was a kid and I was at the UN school, and we learned about this thing called international law and the international community. And he said, I was a very good student. I was first in my class, so I was very excited to learn about something new. And the teacher said, guys, there's this thing called international law. There's the international community. And the world is a just and decent place. It's a good place. There are laws that must be followed. And that's why we have to remain steadfast as Palestinians, because eventually the world will realize that what's being done here is illegal and wrong, and they'll stop it. And he said through the blockade of Gaza, through the attempted coup against the elected government in 2006 or 7, whenever that was, 2007, I guess, through Operation Cast Lead, through Day's Pillar of Defense, through Protective Edge, through the suppression of the Great March of Return, through all of that, he maintained that belief that international law is there. But he said after this, he can't hold that belief anymore. I kind of have to agree with him. It's just outrageous at this point.
And you mentioned that you were stationed in Gaza last year as well. You saw a different chapter, I suppose, of this war a little bit earlier. And one aspect of this is that this is different now because it's been so long, and because we're coming off the back of 3 weeks of blockade of humanitarian aid and electricity and power. If you can describe the difference between your experience last time and this time, how would you say that the situation has evolved?
Yeah, only for the worse, unfortunately. Last time I was here was March and April of 2024, and the Rafah border hadn't been taken yet, so aid was still coming in, not enough to be certain, but some was. And medical evacuations were taking place at a reasonable pace. Not enough, but something so that people could muster. When I was in Khan Yunis last time, the people were hungry. There was a very limited supply of food, but I still think we had protein probably every third or fourth day, like, meat or chicken or fish, something like that. I remember there was one day when milk was delivered to the camp that was inside the hospital, and every mom went and grabbed like as much of it as they could because they hadn't seen milk, but deliveries were getting through. After that, I guess in May or June is when Rafah was attacked, maybe before that. And once the Philadelphia corridor was occupied, and I guess that was May 7th when the crossing was closed. Since then, Israel has had total control. I shouldn't say Israel. Israel and the United States have had total control over what goes in and out of Gaza, and they're quite explicitly using it this time. And they were very clear. There was no attempt to hide it. They said we're stopping any aid from going into Gaza to pressure Hamas to agree to a changing of the ceasefire agreement that was already agreed upon. We all have there's a word for that. It's called terrorism, but But yeah, no, this time the population that I'm dealing with is hunger. They've lost more weight. They've had less protein. And because again, it's been another year. It's true that there was a minor break in the starvation campaign and the blockade, but it was only what, January 19th to March 18th, so whatever that is, 2 months, almost to the day. It's just outrageous. I mean, the when people are malnourished, when people are desperately thirsty, when there's no clean water, this all leads to major health problems, as you can imagine. But it also leads to a total breakdown of society. Like people have a limit. There's a lot of social solidarity in Palestine, but sorry, but the like I'll tell you, the just yesterday I was actually punched in the face by somebody in the hospital. He wasn't swinging at me, but it was the husband of a patient in the women's surgical ward who was upset that the doctors had told him to leave the room when his wife was examined, because we always want to be able to talk to patients without family around so they can speak freely. And when he came out, he grabbed the doctor he grabbed his shoulder and swung him around and tried to swing at him, and he missed. So I kind of pushed him up the wall or against the wall and just said, relax. And he tried to swing at him again, and he hit me. He wasn't trying to hit me. It was fine. He didn't hurt me. But I asked the physicians, I was like, would that kind of thing happen normally? They said, no. This is all since the war. You know, the it's again, people have a limit of what they can take, and I think for a lot of people it was passed a long time ago. There's actually there's been a family dispute going on in Khan Yunis for the past several weeks. We've actually seen a few people shot in that incident. I don't believe anybody has died, but still a few people shot in this dispute. But again, they say, if when Hamas was in control, for better or worse, at least these kinds of things didn't happen. They kept a lid on clan violence and things like that. So the society is I want to say breaking down, but that's kind of passive. It's being destroyed. The social bonds, the bonds of solidarity between people are being torn, and they're being torn by hunger and starvation more so than violence, by lack of clean water, by just making life impossible. If you destroy everyone's home, if you destroy the sewage system, if you destroy the water treatment system, you're taking away everything that makes a society a society. You're taking away the thing that allows children to live, and that's having its intended effect.
I want to ask you, as an American citizen, the Trump administration this week has responded to the attack that we saw on Tuesday, saying that they were consulted on it, that they were aware that it was going to happen. And we have been seeing a Trump administration and Trump presidency that seems to be aligned and in favor of a lot of the actions that Israel has taken in Gaza. What do you make of the way that the United States has handled the situation, certainly this week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's a significant break from the Biden administration. I mean, Biden would rhetorically say this or that, but then the reality was completely different. Biden supported this all the way. It's to the point. I don't know if people remember. Some of us have shorter memories sometimes, but Anthony Blinken went to Israel and was present when the Israelis were putting together the war cabinet resolution, and Ron Dermer would take the resolution over to Blinken. He would approve it, and then he'd say, "I don't agree with this or that." Take it back, and when it was read out, Blinken was brought to the room. And it was read out in English. It wasn't in Hebrew because Blinken had to understand it. So the U.S. has been intimately involved and consulted ahead of time on literally everything from the start. The Israelis can't do anything because the U.S. doesn't even trust the Israelis very much. People sometimes don't understand. The U.S. only gives Israel about 72 hours worth of munitions at a time. The U.S. has tons and tons of munitions pre-positioned in Israel, but under American control. They don't trust them. They know that they'll just go wild and do whatever they want if they give stuff. So they keep them on a pretty tight leash. The Israelis don't do anything without consulting the U.S. That's true under Biden. It's true under Trump as well. But But yeah, no, and it's not good that Donald Trump made a big campaign point of wanting to end what he called forever wars, and I think that's I actually there's not much that he and I would agree on, but certainly that um, negotiated settlement is usually better than a war for everybody. When Zelensky came to the White House recently and Trump was berating him for playing with World War III, risky World War III, I actually thought he was correct about that. People up in arms about it. I thought he was 100% right about that. But he doesn't seem to realize he's doing the exact same thing here. What the Israelis are doing here is not only criminal, it's outrageous, but it's extremely dangerous. It's very easy to see how this, there's many ways that what's going on here spirals into World War III, or even in nuclear war that really just ends our entire species. So, yeah, I wish Donald Trump would live up to his campaign promise and would recognize that there's supporting Israel is one thing. You want to support Israel, fine, but this isn't supporting Israel. This is, in my opinion, this is supporting Israel's ultimate destruction. Which for me is very scary. I actually lived in Israel for a year after I graduated from college. I don't want to see Israeli society destroyed, but it's being morally degenerated to a degree that I've never seen before. When I lived in Israel from 2004 and 5 for about a year, like maybe 9 or 10 months, something like that, and there were certainly problems with racism, especially anti-Arab racism, very severe problems. But it was nothing like this. You didn't have people walking around claiming that Israeli soldiers should rape Palestinian prisoners. You didn't have people walking around mocking the idea of killing children. It's outrageous.
I want to pick up on something that you messaged me as we were trying to set up this interview today and find a time that works for you. You said that, that you'll give me a heads up if there was another mass casualty event. And that made me think of the kind of mentality that you and others around you would be in right now, waiting for something to happen, expecting almost something to happen. How would you describe your own personal mental state right now?
I'm fine. I've volunteered to do this work. Like I said, I've worked in Ukraine. I've also worked in Zimbabwe, Burkina Faso. I've worked in all sorts of places. So, and I've worked in Gaza where I saw the same thing a year ago. So I knew what I was getting myself into. I kind of expected the ceasefire to, I was going to say expect the ceasefire to break down, but that implies that it just naturally happened. I expected Israel to start violating the ceasefire and then just bombing the shit out of Gaza again. While I was here, not because I was coming, it's just because they announced, when they signed the ceasefire agreement, they announced that they would violate it. They literally just said, we're creating, the coalition. That's promised Smotrich and others in the coalition that they would resume the war in February, and then they would Smotrich is, I forget if he's the Jewish Power part of the coalition or the other part of it, but they said, okay, well, great, when you resume the war, we'll come back to the coalition. It's all good. So they announced that they would do this ahead of time. They did it a few weeks later than expected, but that's what it is. But no, my mental state is fine. But the Palestinians are exhausted. How could they not be? No human being can go through this for this. It's approaching 2 years that we've been doing this experiment on a caged group of 2 million people, half of whom are children, most of whom are refugees, to see what happens when you drive them to the absolute limits of human barbarity, killing children en masse, killing old people en masse, killing women en masse, taking prisoners and doing all sorts of absolutely sadistic nonsense to them, starving people. This is the Palestinians they're very resilient people. I'm honestly kind of shocked. I'm always very impressed by those ways. But everything has a limit. This is like I keep saying, this is just well past evidence to deal with. I'm fine. I'm here for 3 weeks, more or less. But that's I can handle anything for 3 weeks. 2 years, that's quite a different matter. And it's not my family that's being killed. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Jewish or Muslim or Christian. I'm not Israeli, obviously. I don't have any. I don't have any actual connection to the conflict. My family's from a small, really plastic country, just Pakistan. But I'm an American. It's really my only real identity, and the reason I come here is to show solidarity with the people that my government is conspiring to destroy, and not just since October 7th, time before that. So yeah, no, my mental state is fine except for being angry, but it's the healthcare workers, the national healthcare workers here really are the people who I'm here to try and support. Their mental state is, they're trying to do their work as best they can, but again, everything has a limit.
When it comes to everything that you have just described, what's happening around you, what you saw happen this week, and the toll that it has taken on the people of Palestinians, you kind of give us an insight into the emotional breakdowns that are happening, and not to mention the humanitarian catastrophe that is ongoing now. We're a year and a half in. How long do you think this war can continue?
Well, it'll continue until the United States stops it. The Israelis have decided to do what they're going to do. Netanyahu famously said, if Biden cuts off arms before the Rafah, which is never a serious thing, but if Biden cuts off arms before the Israelis invade Rafah, then they'll fight with their fingernails. Well, okay, you go do that. You enjoy fighting with your fingernails, and you'll see how far you get, and you'll realize that you can't just slaughter an entire population that way. And then they'll have to actually negotiate an end to the conflict. If the U.S. continues to support them with overwhelming force, nothing. It takes about an hour to describe accurately what's been done to the Gaza Strip in terms of the violence visited on it in the past, 15, 16 months, whatever it is. It's shocking. Nothing like this has ever been done anywhere else on Earth. There's no close equivalent. So. And the reason for that is that the Israelis have the backing of the United States. Israel is a small country. It doesn't, people talk about Merkava tanks. Merkava tanks are mostly made in the United States, and the parts are shipped to Israel and assembled, even with their big guns, the engines, everything is American. The munitions are American. The airplanes are American. The training for the pilots is American. Everything, a lot of the maintenance, the jet fuel provisions, everything is coming from the United States. So it's not Israel attacking this place. It's the United States using Israel to attack this place. It's American. It's the American army with Israeli pilots and Israeli soldiers doing the groundwork. So yeah, the U.S. has a dramatic power differential between us and the Palestinians of Gaza. And if we continue destroying that, we can continue destroying this place forever, but we shouldn't. It's not good for us, and it's certainly not good for them. And it's not good for the Israelis either, like I said. So, I just think we should stop it. And when will it stop? When we stop it. And that's the only answer.
Dr. Sidhwa, thank you so much for your time and your generosity. We appreciate you and your insight.
Thanks a lot. Nice to be here.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Big Picture, and a big thank you to Dr. Feroze Sidhwa for being our guest today. You can keep up to date with everything that is happening in Gaza by following our live blog at middleeasteye.net. If you want to hear this episode or any of our episodes in audio format, then you can do so wherever you get your podcasts from. And until next time, salam.